so because that's worst case scenario, because then they have their arms and they have their legs to manipulate you. At least when they are in front sprawl, you aren't being manipulated by the lower body. You're only having to deal with the direct threat and the transitions that come from that threat. And then standing is the least threatening, but it still can be an issue, okay? So, you want to get my partner? All right, so if Jackson's got me in guard and he's got me in a guillotine, the first thing I want you guys to realize, I'm gonna teach you, well, there's 3 types of guillotines. We're gonna actually break down all of them, but the most threatening to me is the elbow up style where he's gonna flare like this and he's gonna press down and squeeze. Those are the most threatening by far because the defenses get more dynamic. Then there's the old school guillotine where when he wraps and connects his hand, he's gonna roll his elbows down and in and he's gonna use that. There's that style, and then there's arm-in guillotines, okay? You have to understand how to deal with each one. All right, so I'm gonna teach you guys first some of the traditional ways that people dealt with the elbow up and the traditional guillotine, but then I'm gonna teach the way that I do it. I don't use the traditional, but you should know these because they might work for you, okay? When someone wraps your head and they go here, once you've been caught, people tripod onto their head, and then the next theory of this guillotine defense is I wanna grab Jackson like I'm trying to hold his shoulder and posture like this so that as he turns or twists, fights, I have to focus on keeping Jackson on a straight line, or I can begin to put weight on his shoulder so that as he squeezes down on the guillotine, squeeze, right? I have to keep him here. If I allow this to happen, right, it's gonna get worse, until he's gonna get his tap, okay? So tripoding up was like back in the day, this was the standard practice for defending a guillotine. Tripod, they would post their forehead on the mat, reach up and over the shoulder, try to pull in, and you can actually apply like forms of the bottom fluid, but I don't want you to focus on that yet. Would you be worried if you tripoded up? Yeah. As soon as you unlock, I should drop and go into passing game, because then if I can pass the guillotine, it's gonna disappear anyway. Yes, but 100% if I'm tripoding, and then you go, now, you see, I have to go straight into passing. If it's a huge advantage to me if I react. If you got my neck and I don't react, you're gonna put a hook in and I am sweating. And now I'm in big trouble. I'm done, I'm gonna get finished. But if you guys are on like alert, where if you shut down the attack, you should know they wanna transition. So if he's Jackson, that's a great point. I'm here and it's boom. You see what I'm saying? Now I have Von Flu. I should begin to threaten Jackson because it can turn to my advantage, but I have to know that reaction. The second those feet unlock, or you will get swept. Okay? I personally do not use this defense. I don't like it. The reason I don't like it is because when people get really good, they have to squeeze so hard. They squeeze so hard on that I found even when I'm tripoded against the right black belts, it's a problem. Right? Like, I'm posting, butts in the air, I'm driving, I'm pushing with my head. If it's a black belt that's Jackson's size, I'm probably still getting put to sleep. So this works very well, in my opinion, for mid-level guillotines and more. Okay? But when they're real masters, it's not gonna work. I don't like anything that fails me when people are too good. So this is the traditional defense you're gonna get caught. You won't see me. The guillotine defense that I use, when someone gets the guillotine, I don't ever try to fight their grip because their grip is already established, right? Like if it wasn't established, I might fight it. I'm gonna just turn it a little bit so everybody can see. Go ahead. So if I'm trying to fight his grip, he's already established. So he's just gonna throw his weight down, drop to the side. I'm gonna try to fight this grip. And what have I done? Unless I can get Jackson's grip to break, which on a good grappler is so hard. I'm gonna be sitting here fighting this. Does that bother you at all? Turn your body in. Why would this bother him? He's just gonna continue to rotate. He's gonna, look, I'm hanging. I don't use that grip, but I am placing my hand in the middle. What I need to do is I need to strengthen some type of defense that doesn't allow him to get this artery. The battleground that we're fighting over is this artery. When he gets this wrap, this artery's done. He's already got me wrapped. The question is, can Jackson get this? So I'm gonna show you the way that he he wraps, instead of me going here, I knife my hand here. So when he goes back to the mat and rotate, right, I'm keeping this as a frame. When I have this as a frame, nothing closes the inside out to that frame. That's really cool. Yep. But I'm going to keep that open. There's no blood choke on me at all because my inside artery is open. Now, I can also post my hand. Sometimes I only grab the side. I'll post it when he's very I'm using that. And if he opens, again, we should always try to pass, right? But here, when Jackson goes to turn, I'm only focused on keeping that artery. And now, the next thing that should happen, what would you do logically, Jackson? Yep. You could. You'll probably just fix your grip. Watch this. Take the arm out of your grip. That's probably. Now I'm in trouble.
Try to cheat it over and over.
So what I do is when I'm here, as soon as they go to adjust, there's gonna be a moment where, and you'll feel it, it's gonna become super obvious. Right as he lets go, I'm gonna throw my body weight as hard as I can this way, trying to just get this to happen a little bit. All of that pull, when I throw my body weight, so right as the disconnect happens, I'm trying to get just this to pop my head up. You won't always do it. Sometimes they have such a deep, nice grappling in your neck that they're like, okay, I'm gonna make this. And look, I didn't get out. A lot of times I'll go here and I'll start framing Jackson, or I'll just play it here and let him squeeze and fight, and then he adjusts. Yep, we just play this game. Does that make sense? And what I'm focusing on more than anything is I gotta keep this blood tight. Does that make sense? If I try to fight Jackson's grip, right? It's already a stabbing. You feel how secure that feels to you, Jackson? You're not even worried at all. I focus on this. So now as he fights in the blood, I fight to keep it open. I'm safe. I'm good here. As soon as I feel him adjust, I'm back in the center. Okay? We're gonna start with that drill. I do want you to do try to switch the defense. The bigger you are, the more effective it can be. Where you'll post on your forehead, here like this, and while you're posting on your forehead, reach up like you're trying to grab the person's far shoulder blade, and you can anchor your shoulder down. So you'll end up being like this, right? And the focus is try not to let your neck move. When you drive up, all of the speed through that here, that won't push your shoulder. It has to be here. So really focus on, like, I don't know how, like you have, like, your skull is anchored down near your spine. You want to be like this. When you pass up here, boom, and then reach up and around. Practice it, see if you like it. Make sure you do what you talk about every once in a while. Get that, have the person open. The second they open, you have to do it. You don't save it, because he's 100% right. If I'm here, and you tripod, and you go up, I'm going to get such a motor, and then elevate that to here. But if you're high level, the second I do this, guard pass body push-ups right now. And that's money. Those people who are guard passing that, they're giving you a guard pass where their arms are like a fucking job. It is not easy to pass a high level graphic. So if you can get their arms tied up on a specific job and they're doing their legs, that is wonderful. Does that make sense? So let's use the traditional tripod. Look to the lap, put some shoulder weight, try to connect that on the island to keep this point out. Make sure I can do that. And let's do mine. Your neck, shoulders in tight. I only use 1 or 2 grips. You guys might not know. I either catch his rib cage, and that's what I anchor down with. I'm not using like my arm. I'm anchoring with my body because I have to keep this blood flowing. Or I can get much from that and I create an anchor here. Now, with that anchor, I'm not just like, and I could, he breaks his grip, I fight him. He breaks his grip, I fight him. I want to escape. As soon as I feel that grip break, I'm gonna throw my body in reverse to try to get the arm to it. What I need to happen is this just enough to pop my head. You can continue to play the game, or you can come up and over and that's the one I really want you to master. Alright?
That's the MVP way.
If you get really good at that defense, your defense is going to skyrocket. Okay, let's start with these two and then we're going to go a lot further. This is only a fragment of what I'm showing you. Got it? 1, 2, 3. Let's go. Grab a partner.